They want to run the football to the left.
And they're moving quickly. Chad Johnson in stride. And there he goes. Touchdown, Cincinnati. Ran past Bob Sanders. And they answer right back.
Waiting at the 15-yard line. Bodine snaps it back. Dalton has time. He throws it into the end zone. It is caught by Eifert for a badly needed Bengals touchdown. And here's a quarterback sneak, and Andy Dalton dives into the end zone.
You guys are old school.
You bet. Palmer under pressure for the end zone. Johnson, what a catch.
What a throw. Dalton throws. A.J. Green at the 50. Green off to the races. Green still going. A.J. Green at the 5. Touchdown, Cincinnati. 80 yards.
Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Ace. My man Zim in the house. He is Eric. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Yes, Maan got called in for some extra overtime. I think he's just a little nervous about this argument. He was a 2015 guy. I think he tried to maybe call himself into overtime. No, he's out protecting our community, Maan. Be safe out there. We know you're going to jump in and give us your opinions, I'm sure. Guys, welcome to the Bengals Pulse. It's great to have you guys on here. We got some Bengal news to talk about first, and then 2005 Bengals versus 2015 Bengals is going to be a lot of fun. Guys, those clips that you just watched, that Seahawks-Bengals game in 2015 is one of my favorite all-time games. What an incredible game that was. What an incredible comeback. And, of course, just watching A.J. Green torch the Ravens game after game. Guys, Ace, I'm going to start with you. Tell me your thoughts after watching a couple of those clips, some good times in Bengals history.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, Ocho proposing to the cheerleader was classic. I mean, that was a fire game as well. I mean, to go AJ, you lead in with that one. I think anytime you think of any AJ play, that's the one that comes to mind, is where he spent that of the three Ravens defenders and burned them for the touchdown. So, and then you had Eifert in there too. So, like, it just kind of showed what kind of skilled players that this franchise has had and how great they are. So I think that those were some great clips to use.
Absolutely. Zam, what are your thoughts just watching those clips?
Man, I was thinking about what a long time coming, I guess, but it happens. It's time really flies. We've been doing this Bengals stuff so long.
Crazy.
That time has really like flown. That wasn't that long ago, but it, we're 8, 9 years removed from, and even further than that with the 2005. But the thing that stuck out to me is like that Seahawks game. I thought that was one of the, I'm going to tell you, the Vikings game that we had this year is in my top 10 Bengals game too. But I feel the same way about that as the Seahawks game. It's not that it's a playoff game. It's just like, it's those games like that give you like that glimmer of hope when those are the games that normally in the back of your head, you're like, man, I don't know, we're going to pull this one off. And we didn't have many of those games back then. And that was a game. And that game stood out to me. I know the one where Marvin Jones gets all the touchdowns like early in the game, like the what is it, like 4 tutties or whatever in the 2015
Oh,
game.
Yeah.
There's some games in there that I just remember. I remember going on the road and traveling, and my mom went and I remember I got it on my phone still, and like I'm chanting like we're 7-0, and like I just remember us being on a heater, and I don't remember feeling like that up until 2021 on the. I didn't even feel like that in 21. Yeah, like 2015 made me feel like okay, like I feel like that's part of the reason why I'm very, very. I don't really bring up the past as much because that's kind of like our era right there. Like me and Ace, and like that's like our time where we kind of flourished and we're now adults. like real adults, like old enough to drink, you know what I mean? And like it isn't marred by like the 90s that everybody wants to remind us about. It's like a lot of winning, and that's what this whole show, I think, even tonight is about. As we discuss these two teams or whatever, it's a lot of winning in there, and even in the years in between, it isn't like 1-win seasons. Like these are legit rosters that we're putting out there that you could feel proud of.
And that Bengals Seahawks game, remember, guys, that game was early on in the season, right? It kind of set the tone for that season, I think, as a whole. Eric, real quick, your thoughts on those clips. What great memories do you have of those two teams?
So 2015 is special to me. I've been a displaced fan my whole life, from North Dakota all the way to Florida. So my son and I got to go to our very first game that year. And I was so torn to put the Brandon Tate touchdown catch in there, because we saw that at our very first game. We saw it live. We saw it right. There's so many memories for it, but I can't put him in over AJ Green. So going through that just brings you back all those memories. And not only was it such a special season for us because we thought it was going to be, this was our run, but it was, Austin, my son, was 8 years old. And so those are some of his very first memories were tied around that season. And, I feel bad that some of my first memories are the Bengals losing in the 89 Super Bowl. Well, he had a very similar first traumatic memory of the Bengals losing to the Steelers. So it's kind of frustrating, but it builds our character, and here we are, and now we can debate these things and move forward and ready for next year's Super Bowl run.
Well, before we get into the 2005, 2015 guys, let's talk a little Bengals news. Some big news today. The Bengals lose another coach, a very good football coach in Rob Livingstone, a guy that's been coaching the DBs for the Bengals for a very long time. Again, I know this year was a struggle for the back end of our defense, but overall, I think we can all say Rob Livingstone's done a hell of a job and deserves this opportunity that Deion Sanders has put forth, making him the defensive coordinator out at the University of Colorado. Real quick, Ace, let me get your thoughts on, one, the Bengals losing Rob Livingstone and the impact it might have on this Bengals coaching staff.
Yeah, for me, I kind of was shocked as the news came across the screen. We've been in spaces, and the topic of this offseason has been, what are we going to do with Dax Hill and this young secondary that gave up, some of the longest plays and explosive plays this season. Like, this was supposed to be an offseason where they were going to get together. We were going to see how year two looked. And to me, frankly, I don't like it, because Dax Hill, if you're talking about bringing in a brand new coach for him after a season that he kind of struggled at some points during the season, I don't know if this is the best recipe for that. However, if you're able to upgrade and bring in a better secondary coach, it could do wonders for the secondary. But it not only affects him, you also have DJ Turner, you also have CCB there, you also have Jordan Battle. So if they can get the right hire in there, I think that it is potentially an upgrade, right? But I mean, when Deion Sanders is calling for your secondary coach, we all know who Primetime is, what he's done for this game. That's a hell of a kind of glowing remark for Rob Livingstone, the fact that Primetime wanted to bring him over there as a defensive coordinator. So, hopefully this opens it up to where the Bengals can bring in somebody that can really help Dax Hill develop. And I've already seen some people on Twitter recommending some people from Michigan, which obviously if you have DJ Turner and Dax Hill, maybe you look to pull somebody from that coaching tree. But I'm not going to say that I'm concerned or panicked, but it's like, man, I was kind of one of the few pulling for Dax Hill to take the step the second season. And I feel like this puts a little bit of a hurdle in that way.
Yeah, I agree. Zim, your thoughts on Rob Livingstone? Again, a guy that I'm honestly surprised hasn't been plucked yet from the coaching staff. What are your thoughts, Zim, on us losing Rob Livingstone, and again, the impact that it might have on this coaching staff?
I think you still got guys like like Charles Burke still there. You still got elements of the secondary still there. Like that's the cornerback coach, and you still got Lou Anarumo at the. I think the whole all season people have been saying you want something new and you don't want the Bengals to stay stagnant. And I mean, like, to me, if they would have been like losing a whole D coordinator, I think, then yeah, I would be like, I don't know how this is going to look because we off the year we just came off of. But I'm one of those guys. I gotta wait and see. The guy that they bring in, it might be somebody that I really, really like. I don't even know who's a potential candidate because I wasn't even expecting it. So I don't even. I hadn't been looking at it at all. So I don't know. I'm with you, Ace. I saw a couple people recommend I think the other D coordinator, or I forgot his position on the Michigan Wolverines. I saw that like 2 or 3 times, but I don't even know who's like a legit candidate. I guess I need to start like brushing up on my coordinators and see who I think should be the next in line. But I do think that this team, Jake, coming into the season, I watched your show. You probably watched our show where I thought that 2023 roster was just so loaded, but many times they were just so outcoached, like it primarily on the defensive side of the ball. So I don't know. Let's just see. Let's see.
Well, I mean, you got Lou Anarumo, guys, and he obviously has that background in the defensive backfield. So, hopefully we see some good come from that. Hopefully he's got some good candidates. Again, they really struggled. Ace, you're 100% right. They struggled this year, and that's I think what makes me more nervous than anything is you got such a young defensive backfield. I think probably the youngest position on our team. And, hopefully there's a good transition there, losing Rob Livingstone. And we still, guys, have not hired a quarterbacks coach. Again, Eric, I want to go to you on this one. Eric, what are your thoughts on the Bengals still not hiring a quarterback coach? And do you think that maybe they have some candidates in mind?
I actually love it. Typically you would think that the Bengals would just promote from within. They have their guys, they stick with their guys. There's been a lot of people over the years that have put them at fault for staying with their people too long. And I think this shows that they're not just going to give it to the guy because he's been in the building. And that kind of gives me some excitement, like go out and get a fresh young mind if he's available, and do the same thing for your secondary coach. Anybody that you can bring them in. And this is not your same old Bengals, because in the past they would just handed it to the assistant and marched on. So I'm excited about it.
Well, obviously Dan Pitcher going from that position to offensive coordinator, I think that helps a little bit too, right, guys? He's already got that good relationship with Joe Burrow. So whoever they bring in there, I think the transition is going to be easy. And I do think too, I mean, they've got to be having guys knocking down the door trying to get that job. I mean, that job is going to get you an offensive coordinator job very quickly, coaching one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the NFL. All right, guys, let's move on. We got obviously some big news coming up here. Willie Anderson, does he get elected into the Hall of Fame? I think we could all say it's crazy if he doesn't. He's so well deserving, more deserving, I think, than any Bengal that comes to mind. Really should have been in, I think, the last couple years. Zim, let me start with you on this one. Willie Anderson, do you think he gets in? And obviously talk about your thoughts on how deserving he is.
I like to stay optimistic as possible. I do think that he deserves to get in there. It does feel a little funny, the news around it, like just different things that, you kind of see based off of, around this time, they normally would start filming like little stuff and act surprised and all types of stuff like that. That doesn't encourage it, but maybe he still gets in. I don't know. But Willie Anderson is one of the greatest, not alone, like just, I made a mistake early on by saying he's one of the best right tackles of all time. And I remember after that, somebody was like, what? And I was like, what? What's the right? they were like, bro, he's one of the best tackles, one of the best offensive linemen of all time. 100%. When you look at his numbers, they're staggering. His PFF grade, when they went back and looked at it, his grades would test is top 3 in the NFL every single year that he's played. Like when they went back and caught it in retrograde and then pulled up everything like that. He's got seasons where he only gave up like a combined 8 pressures. Like he had a lot of insane numbers. That
think about the teams he played for.
Right.
I mean, he played in the dark era of Bengals football where we won 43 games in a decade. I mean, this guy, not only did he play for bad Bengals teams, but he played against incredible competition. Look how many Hall of Famers from that era played edge rusher. It's staggering. Have you
ever seen him on Instagram and stuff, show some of his highlights against Strahan? I mean, name anybody. Name it. There's nobody he didn't go against, man. And it's insane that we have to fight for Willie to do this. I was trying to pull up the numbers that I was saying. I'm mad I ain't have it sitting right there. But I did have some insane numbers that I just thought this whole entire time. I mean, he went
let's go to Ace real quick.
He went 13. He went 13 seasons and only allowed 16 sacks.
That's crazy.
We have guys on our offensive line that have given that damn near up in 1 year.
That's
one
crazy.
year. This dude went 13 seasons, 16 sacks. From 1999 to 2001, he only allowed one quarterback pressure in 3 seasons.
Crazy.
3 seasons.
And did he just threw names out? Reggie White, Bruce Smith. I mean, you're talking about some of the best of all time, not just of that time, some of the best edge rushers. And he gave up I'm not good at math, but just a little over a sack a season. And think about the quarterbacks he had. I mean, it's crazy. Ace, your thoughts on Willie Anderson?
Yeah, man. I mean, for me, Willie should have been in years ago if we're just keeping it a buck. I mean, crazy. Willie Anderson was one of the best tackles of his era of all time. You've got Hall of Famers like Warren Sapp, Michael Strahan that's surprised that he's not in the Hall of Fame. Bill Cowher, who hates the Bengals, that's sitting there saying, hey, this guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. As you guys mentioned, went against elite competition, played in a small market, but what the hell does that have to do with being in the Hall of Fame? Either you're a baller or not. It doesn't matter if you were drafted in Cincinnati. It doesn't matter if you played in a small market. It doesn't matter if the team wasn't successful. He was successful. He was an all-pro, Pro Bowler. I mean, I don't want to bring up Madden, but I popped in Madden 06 one year. Willie Anderson was like a 98. He was like the best tackle on the game. I popped in another one. He was the best tackle on the game. Like in every season, Willie Anderson was like the best tackle in the game. So for me, man, it's a travesty, and this is a guy that should have been in. I mean, if you're going to put in the guy from the Cleveland Browns last year, I mean, he doesn't have those numbers that Zim just rattled off. And he didn't go against anywhere near the competition of a Bruce Smith or, a Reggie or anything like that. So to me, it's just ridiculous. I mean, T.O. said it best, man. This is a flawed process. I mean, when T.O. didn't get in, I mean, the second leading receiver of all time, like, what are we doing here? So you got, to me, after Walter Jones, that's the only person you could probably argue with Willie Anderson. Like, there's nobody else, bro. Like, it just doesn't make sense. If they don't put him in this year, it's a travesty.
I can't think of what that Browns offense – what is his name? What was his name, that offensive lineman for the Browns that got in? What was that guy's name?
Joe Thomas?
Oh, yeah, Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas, thank you. That's the thing. That's crazy.
Joe Thomas is not better than Willie
Anderson.
No, listen.
Mr.
Not only is he not better.
Mr. 0-16. Mr. 0-16, Joe Thomas.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I was going to say. Not only is he not better than Willie Anderson, but he played on worse teams than Willie Anderson did. It's absolutely crazy. It makes no sense how Willie Anderson is not in the Hall of Fame. Eric, before we move on real quick, tell me your thoughts on Willie Anderson.
No, I mean, he should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, both of our Andersons should be in the Hall of Fame. The process does seem to be flawed. They have where people have to go and make their case and basically pitch to the committee every year, and this year that got canceled for whatever reason. I don't know why they have to do that, but I think next year, I think we've got the people to pitch right here. Whoever, I think it was Jeff Hobson. I think we need Zim in there. We need Ace in there. Let's, jungle to the hall this. Let's make a hype video for Willie Anderson. This man needs to get in the Hall of Fame. He's got all these people that are pitching for him. Bill Cowher, Michael Strahan. Let's just do it. Let's do it right. Let's get him in. They can't, it's a travesty. And
why do we even?
You can't have Browns in there and not have Bengals in there.
Why do we?
We shouldn't have to
make the case. It's crazy. It just doesn't. If he doesn't get in, it is a travesty. It truly is. And I tell you, he's such a high character guy. I mean, how do you not love this guy? Year after year, he doesn't get the opportunity to be a Hall of Famer, and hopefully he gets in, because it's going to break my heart to have to watch him talk about not getting in again. But let's move on, guys. Here we go. 2005 versus 2015. Now, let me say this. Now, this is two Bengals teams, right? That I think we could all say the same thing. Watching those two teams play, we thought we're going to get our first Super Bowl win. I know I did. 2005, I right before we kicked off against the Steelers in the playoff game, I thought, this is it. I am going to watch this Super Bowl run right now, finally. And again, let's remember, before that, guys, it was tough. It was very tough to be a Bengal fan. 2015, the same way, right? We reel off all those wins in a row. Andy Dalton, Ace, your favorite Bengal quarterback of all time. Andy Dalton, he looks like Joe Montana. I mean, let's say this. Andy Dalton, before he got hurt, was playing really at an MVP level. I know that sounds crazy, but it is the truth. And again, the way that Bengals 2015 defense was playing, I thought, before he got hurt in that Steeler game, which, by the way, I absolutely love Hugh Jackson. He's one of my favorite people. But why are we calling a screen from the 4-yard line? I mean, that just still to this day breaks my heart. Not the best play call in that situation, but we try to run a tunnel screen from the 4-yard line, and his thumb gets hit on a player, breaks his thumb, and that's it, right? A.J. McCarron comes in. He goes 2-2 on an incredibly loaded team, and season over that following week in that wild card game. Both seasons end against the Steelers. Ace, I'm going to start with you. Okay. And I think the best way for us to start this off is to kind of give our opinions about – let's start with the 2005 team, okay? So I want to hear your opinions on the team. Again, I was thinking about this and how are we going to approach this? Because is this going to be something where we are saying that the 2005 team had a better chance to win the Super Bowl than the 2015 team? Are we looking at rosters? Are we looking at the season? I think, guys, that we need to kind of look at everything, right? We need to look at the way the teams played throughout the season, when they got hot, what kind of rosters did they have, and all of the above. So I'm going to start with you, Ace.
Yeah.
I want to hear your thoughts, your general thoughts on this 2005 Bengals team.
Well, for me, it's funny. You kind of mentioned Andy Dalton, and, you talked about him having MVP season, right? Didn't finish in the top 5 in MVP voting, though, in 2015. But you know who did? Carson Palmer did in 2005. The funny thing is he did in 2015, but forget that version of Carson. But not only did he do that, this guy in 2005 was the NFL passing touchdowns leader. He was the NFL completion percentage leader in 2005. He engineered one of the greatest seasons that we've seen from a Bengals quarterback. Now, we might be able to say Andy Dalton had an MVP-type season in 2015, but Carson Palmer that year was top 3 in the league. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a he might be this, he might be that. That was the opening for me from Carson Palmer. So when it starts at the quarterbacks, even though I hate Carson, what he did to the city and all of that, you cannot deny that Carson Palmer looked like what we think of Joe Burrow back in 2005 when he played for this team. So I got to start it there with the quarterbacks.
Facts, 100% facts. And again, you know, that quarterback season really didn't get topped until our guy Joe Burrow topped it. When you talk about the touchdowns, and I mean, Carson almost 4,000 yards passing, 32 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Guys, he had a 101.1 quarterback rating. I mean, he was lights out in 2005. And again, we haven't seen that kind of quarterback play, even from him afterwards. We haven't seen that type of quarterback play until our guy Joe Burrow had a breakout year, throwing for 34 touchdowns. So again, Zim, I want to go to you. I want your initial thoughts on this 2005 Bengals team.
I feel like I stole a lot of my he gave all the numbers on Carson that I wanted to use, but I was gonna pivot off of that too, and we could talk about the quarterbacks all day. And I think that, like, ultimately, all of these scenarios, when you were just talking about, I want to dive into this and everything like that, I think in my mind, I come back to the quarterback every single time. Like, whether it's in a hypothetical, whether it's could this team beat this team, whether it's head to head, it's Carson over Dalton. Like, now the teams are very fascinating to me, but just staying on 2005, I think that the rushing of Rudy almost having like 1,500 yards, and then the offensive line being on that level, you know, like that 2005 with Willie, with all this stuff going on, you just got like this juggernaut offensive line, top 3 offensive line probably in football. Carson Palmer, I think, was only sacked like 19 times. And if you go back on a couple of plays that really pissed me off, a couple of those are on him. That offensive line was lights out. They could run behind, like they could run. Like if we had any element of that currently right now, I mean, the Bengals would be the most unstoppable force, like known to man, with Joe Burrow. Like, because it is very Joe Burrow-esque. Like when you start bringing up the Carson Palmer numbers, the completion percentage is nearly like 68% that year. So I mean, you're not missing throws. I went back and just looked at the games. In the games that they didn't throw a lot, like the Browns game later in the season, yeah, he didn't throw. I think he threw something light, but they ran for 200 yards. So you know what I mean? You get like the total yards in all these games are like 300 plus every single week. That offense was incredible. And I was telling somebody this earlier in the spaces. Had they gone to just at least go to a Super Bowl, you know how we talk about the greatest show on turf, or we talk about some of the greater offenses in the NFL. Had they accomplished more, people would talk about that team a lot more, because then you would have Chris Henry, you know, making plays in a playoff atmosphere. You know what I'm saying? You would have all these different elements that will fit in people's memory bank of the team. But because they went out the way that they went out, as we'll probably talk about later, you know, it kind of hurts like what people perceive that team to be. I always said this too. I thought the 2005 and 2015 teams were much better than our Super Bowl 2021 team, which is insane.
Yes.
Like for younger Bengals fans or just random people that I meet online, they be like, what? Like they don't really understand that.
True.
The 2021 team was just like Joe Burrow throwing a bomb before halftime, making explosive plays, super inconsistent with a terrible offensive line. 2005 was a dominant force that would make any team that we would if we had Joe Burrow with these weapons, which we're going to talk about the weapons. I don't know if the Bengals lose more than 2 games at most with the, you know, and I wanted to say nothing but good stuff, but I will say when I start talking about the defense, to me, that's a big difference between 2005 and 2015. But just initially, 2005, they caused so many turnovers. They made it happen all the time. I just thought they gave up a lot more yards as we're going to compare like 2015. But I don't think it was bad either, though. That's the thing. It wasn't bad, and it had key guys. You see, Ace has got the Odell Thurman on. I got the Justin Smith on right now. So it's not like we were rolling out bums out there. I ain't trying to say that, but I just think when we start talking 2015, the defense is vastly undersold, kind of reminiscent of 2022. We were talking about that also.
Yeah,
that defense is good. So
no, facts. And I think too, when Maan and I have this argument on a weekly basis, which we do, I always just end with this before I drop the mic on them. Who are you going to take in a Super Bowl? Andy Dalton or Carson Palmer? I mean, again, we can look at all the other things out there.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, it's quarterback play, right? It's quarterback play when these teams get to that level. And to me, again, I'm not a Carson Palmer fan after everything that went down. I used to be, but obviously not now. And I love Andy Dalton as a person. And I do think Andy Dalton did some great things for this franchise. But if you're telling me I got to choose between those two, I'm taking Carson Palmer.
But
it's not even.
But in the spirit of this exercise, isn't it fair to just look at Andy Dalton in 2015?
Yes, and that's I think that's what we have to do here is look at the way Andy Dalton was playing in 2015. Let me throw this number at you guys real quick because we talked about Carson with the 32 touchdowns, the 12 interceptions, 3,800 yards for Carson Palmer in 2005. But I'm going to help Maan out here, and I'm just going to throw this at you guys real quick. Andy Dalton, again, he missed 4 games that year, 5 if you include the playoffs. Andy Dalton missing those amount of games, those 4 games, he still threw for 32, almost 3,300 yards. He had 25 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions and did not play 4 games. So, again, you're looking at 32 touchdowns for Carson to 25, missing 4 games. 4 games for Andy Dalton. I know when the season ended, Andy Dalton was in the MVP talk because, again, he missed those games. Carson Palmer was. But I think it's fair to say that Andy Dalton had just as good of a season as Carson Palmer did in 2005 in 15. But again, if I'm going to take a quarterback in the Super Bowl, I'm taking Carson Palmer. Eric, your thoughts real quick on 2005.
I mean, 2005 was the year it felt like it was all going to happen for us. We've gone through so many of those, unfortunately. So it's really hard to argue against that. And I do have a clip from Maan. I'll play it here in a little bit to argue his points. Carson Palmer is the dude, but 2015 was our first game to go in the stadium, and that was the only time that I've ever seen Andy Dalton act like a quarterback. Watching, we got great seats, so we were up near them, and that dude was on his guys on the sideline. He was a leader. It was the first time I've ever seen him show emotion. He was yelling at the guys. I was just shocked. I'm like, oh my God, we finally have a leader. So if you're going to make any argument that Andy Dalton wasn't Carson Palmer, no, he wasn't. But I make the argument that he was playing and leading a team like an MVP that year. And if it hadn't been for that injury, who knows where we'd been. Looking at the stats here, if you combine Andy Dalton and AJ McCarron, they threw for more yards than Carson Palmer did. So, and that's with AJ McCarron, not, just getting thrown to the wolves. So it's hard to just make the case. Career-wise, Carson Palmer has it. But in that season, Andy Dalton was it, man. He was leading us, and there's something to be said about riding that emotion. I
think it's almost a parallel how we're talking about Carson and Andy. Like, clearly Carson was the better of the two, right? I think you could say the same about the defense. Like, clearly 2015 is better, right? You got You got Geno Atkins, you got Reggie Nelson, you got a lot of talented players over there, Vontaze Burfict. However, on the 2005 side, from a statistics standpoint, they were the number one team in the NFL in turnover differential that season. So, like, they were the number one team in the NFL. They had guys like Delta O'Neal who had 10 interceptions, which is nothing to sneeze at. You talk about the guy's jersey that I got on right now, follow up to being NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. Odell Thurman had 5 interceptions that season. I think there's some parallels in that. Like, obviously, 2015 is better, but when it comes down to certain players, another guy that slept on, Justin Smith, my partner has his jersey on right now. He clearly was a Pro Bowler, didn't make it until he left Cincinnati. Wonder why. But you had guys like that player on there. You know, you're talking about some guys that could be fringe Hall of Famers. And then you talk about some guys that just were really overlooked on that defense as well. When you talk about a guy like Brian Simmons, like, I feel like he's super underrated as well. When I was on Madden as well, he was like a 90 on there. I didn't even know Brian Simmons was that good the way that people talked about him.
He had 83 tackles that year. He was no slouch, bro.
And then you talk about Torrey James. Like, Torrey James was coming off of a Pro Bowl season, I believe, a year before that. So you had really 2 good corners there on that defense, guys that knew what they were doing. Now, obviously, 2015, if you're including the coaching staff, that might go into their favor because they had a lot of, you know, future head coaches and stuff like that. Obviously, they had Zimmer and stuff like that. But I just think that the argument could possibly be made that the 2005 team is maybe the Andy Dalton of that situation, and maybe 2015 is the Carson Palmer.
That's good. I like that. That's interesting.
On the defensive tip, and I was looking at this a lot more. I will say this: 2015, to me, the roster itself and the production from a lot of guys or whatever, as a cumulative effort, like the wide receivers numbers, as like all together, like, people don't understand. Like, yes, Chris Henry was the man, but he had 400 yards that year. When you take all of the receivers together and you put them all together, they actually had more yards on the 2015 because they have a Tyler Eifert on that team. But focusing, and I think a lot of times because it's sexy to talk offense, on the defensive end, the sack numbers is nearly double with 2015. Yes. 2005 did not get sacks on that level. Now, pressure numbers, I don't really know. Like, like, in my mind, Justin Smith was doing his thing and all these things were happening. But Carlos Dunlap having 14 sacks and Atkins having 11 sacks. And then you had Michael Johnson. You had all these guys that you could just throw at them. And at the time, I don't think that we thought it was like ferocious. But now that I've seen like teams now moving forward in our current teams right now, like, man, if we had that, we'd be in a bowl. Like, Dunlap, you know what I'm saying? You had Pecco, Gilberry as a rotational piece. You got Burfict in his prime. You got Malaluga. You got AJ Hawk, it's just, like playing the equivalent of Keem Davis Gaither right now. AJ Hawk, like, on the back end of his career, but he was no slouch. You know what I mean? So on the defensive end and some of those guys up front, I just thought that, like, 2015 really looks damn good.
He's starting to turn. Let me throw some numbers. Hang on. Let me throw some numbers at you guys real quick. I'm going to throw some numbers real quick at you. Hang on one second. Just listen to these numbers real quick. All right. 2005 Bengals offense. Points for, they were 4th. Yards, they were 6th. Turnover differential, they were 5. 2005 defense. We're staying on 2005. 22nd in points for, 28th in yards given up, but 1st in turnover differential. Guys, the 2005 defense, they only had 28 sacks, which is not very good. Justin Smith actually led the team in sacks with only 6, guys. Only 6 sacks, which is crazy to think. The Bengals defense had 53 turnovers. 53 turnovers. That is insane. I can't even remember the last time any defense in the NFL has had 53 total turnovers. Delta O'Neal, which, by the way, we're going to talk about the All-Pro. He was an All-Pro that year.
Yes, sir.
10 interceptions. Torrey James, another solid year, 5 interceptions. Odell Thurman, 5 interceptions. By the way, 150 tackles from Odell Thurman as a rookie. Dog. Serious dog. Before Vontaze Burfict, he was a dog. Guys, Kevin Casefaharn. Remember Kevin Casefaharn, the starting safety? He had 3 picks. I mean, this defense, I think Brian Simmons had 3 picks. This defense, yes, it gave up a lot of yards, but 53 total turnovers. Now, Eric, before you go, because I know you're going to talk about 2015, let me throw out 2015 just to be fair. 2015 offense, 7th in points for, 15th in yards. 2015 defense, guys, 2nd in points for, 11th in yards, 6th in turnover differential. The Bengals offense in 2015 was actually better in turnover differential. They were 4th. Remember, 2005 was 5th. They had 42 sacks. You said it already, Zim. You had Carlos Dunlap. You had Geno Atkins. You had Michael Johnson. Between those 3 guys,
Gilberry is a rotational piece.
And Gilberry as a rotational. Between those 3 guys, almost 30 sacks from those 3 guys that year. And then they ended up with 37 turnovers from that 2015 defense. Eric, go ahead, man. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I want to get Maan's video in here because he's going to, he doesn't have much opportunity to state his case, but go ahead.
Before we go to that, little stat. You said the 2005 team was number 1 in turnover differential, right? Well, what if I told you that teams with a positive turnover differential win 78% of their games in the NFL? So that means if you're winning that battle, you're winning, especially if you're handing it back to Carson Palmer and them boys. I'm just saying.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. All right, let's listen to Maan. Hopefully, how long is it? Hopefully, it's not that long.
It's long enough for your attention span.
Hey, can I cite
That's about 30 seconds.
Hold on. Can I cite an error? I said Whitworth earlier when I was talking about Levi Jones on the 2005, but I was cross-referencing in my mind. But Steinbach, Braun, Levi Jones,
easily the better line.
Insane. I'm sorry about that though.
Easy the better line. Go ahead, Eric.
All right.
Hey guys, this is Maan. Wish I could be on the show tonight, but unfortunately I'm at work and can't get out of it. Interesting debate tonight. 2005 versus 2015. 2005, unbelievable football team, elite offense. Carson was playing probably the best of his career. Chad, Chris Henry, TJ, Rudy. Hard to argue against that team. Willie Anderson was also on that line. The offense of 2005 was better than 2015, but not that much better. 2015 is my choice. Andy Dalton was an MVP candidate that year. You had Marvin Jones. You had A.J. Green. You had Mohamed Sanu. Jeremy Hill was playing really well. Good team. Tyler Eifert. Jermaine Gresham was also on that team. Just a very good offense. They were dominant at times. The big difference between the two, not even close. This is what tips the scales, and this is why 2015 is the best.
Oh, what happened? I didn't hear it. He kind of cut out there at the end. What happened? Oh, he couldn't prove it.
2015 was the best.
And that's all.
No, really, what happened?
Yeah, what happened? Because I think he was talking about the defense, wasn't he?
Yeah, the defense is why he says that they were the best. Yeah.
Oh, he just said that in general. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought he was about to say it. He said this is what this is. Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. I got you. I was wondering the same thing, Zim. So let me say this. Let me because again, if we're looking at rosters, right? If we're looking at 2005 roster, we're looking at 2015 roster. I'm going to go through just the offensive side of the ball for the 2005 roster. I want you to listen to these names, okay? It's insane. When you think about this, it's crazy. Carson Palmer, right? We said 3,800 yards. Rudy Johnson. By the way, Carson Palmer. And remember, in 2005,
Rudy went crazy.
The Pro Bowl was actually legit, right? It was legit the way they voted. It was actually legit. It wasn't a show like it is now. No. Carson Palmer, Pro Bowler, 3,800 yards. Rudy Johnson, Pro Bowler, 1,458 yards and 12 touchdowns. Insane. Chad Johnson, first team All-Pro, Pro Bowler, 97 receptions, 1,400 yards, 9 touchdowns. TJ Houshmandzadeh, 78 catches, 956 yards. Remember, guys, he was only 44 yards away from us having 2,000 yards receivers, 7 touchdowns. Chris Henry, remember, this was his rookie year.
Yeah.
31 catches, 422 yards, but he averaged 14 yards a catch as a rookie.
Yeah.
6 touchdowns for him. Reggie Kelly was our starting tight end, solid, right? Not the receiver of Tyler Eifert, but a better blocker by far than Tyler Eifert. Then you have, listen to this offensive line. Yeah. Willie Anderson, first team All-Pro, Pro Bowler, going to be in the Hall of Fame either this year or next year. Levi Jones, the other tackle, Pro Bowler. Both of our tackles went to the Pro Bowl.
Pro Bowl. We had six Pro Bowlers on this team.
6 Pro Bowlers and 3 All-Pros, first team All-Pros. Guards, Eric Steinbach and Bobby Williams. I'm going to tell you right now, Bobby Williams, one of the most underrated Bengals of that decade. He was so solid of a football player. Rich Bram at center. I mean, that offensive line is nasty.
Center. Yeah,
nasty.
But remember, I want to bring you. Hold on, I want to bring you to a point. You know how Maan said that the defense tipped the scale for him in the 2015, right?
Right.
I think the conversation of tipping the scale to me, and not to say that the 2015 offensive line was bad because it was darn good, but 2005 offensive line, you could make the argument tips the scale as well. It's that good.
Agreed.
Who was 2015 center? Kyle Cook? Like, what are we doing here?
It was Bodine.
Let me tell you.
Eric. It was Bodine. That was the weak link.
Yeah, Bodine. Yeah. Eric Guychek was a rookie that year. Remember, he ended up taking over for Rich Bram. So solid. He was solid rookie. You know. Tab Perry. Listen to Tab Perry. Don't forget Tab Perry.
Tab Perry, baby.
Tab Perry that year had over 1,500 kickoff return yards. Over 1,500. Wow. In 15, the leading Bengal kickoff returner had like 200 yards, 250 yards, something like that. Shane Graham that year, almost at 88% kicking field goals, 28 for 32, 47 of 47 from extra point. As well. We'll talk about his counterpart. Now, defensively, again, I know
Hold on. I got one more for you. There was a gentleman that was, I believe, wide receiver 5 on this team. Went by the name of Kevin Walter. Was so good that he went to the Texans, signed a contract, and had like 2 years where he had 800 receiving yards. And he was wide receiver number 5 on the Bengals of that team.
And remember too, guys, when he went to the Texans, he was legit being talked about as one of the top free agents receivers in football. And you're right. He was 5th on the depth chart on this team. Listen to this defense real quick. It's not shabby by any means. Robert Geathers, one of the Bengal all-time greats, Justin Smith, obviously, with 92 tackles from his position, from the edge and interior defensive tackle position. He had 92 tackles, guys. Only 6 sacks. John Thornton. Jonathan Fanene was a rookie that year. This rookie class is one of the best in Bengals history. You had Caleb Miller. You remember him? The linebacker, the one that was on front of Sports Illustrated for the Bengals when he depleted Hines Ward, Caleb Miller, Odell Thurman, like you said, defensive rookie of the year, Brian Simmons, again, one of the best linebackers that really has ever played for the Bengals. Brian Simmons to KO Spikes in that same draft, just incredible. Landon Johnson, for you guys that remember Landon Johnson, a very solid linebacker for the Bengals for a lot of years. Remember who else was a rookie? David Pollock was a rookie that year. Played the edge, played outside linebacker. Remember, guys, toward the end of that year, he really was taking off. I mean, he was becoming the player that he was at Georgia until obviously the injury, which was very unfortunate. Torrey James, Delta O'Neal, Kevin Case-Faharn. Remember, Madei Williams was the starting other safety.
Yes.
He got hurt. He only played 4 games, and then Anthony Mitchell took over. Listen to this rookie class. Chris Henry, Eric Guychek, Tab Perry, Jonathan Fanene, Odell Thurman, and David Pollock. That was the 2005 draft. And again,
please spare us the 2015 one because we know.
I'm not going to even say the 2015 one because it's the
worst Why not?
draft. That's one of the worst drafts in NFL history.
You know what's
Bengal history.
You know what that draft. As we're talking about the players and as you're describing this, and I know we're talking 2005, 2015, don't you just feel like, man, what happened to us up front, or what happened to us in some of these positions? And we're looking where we got a draft coming up, in a couple months, and you're just thinking about like, where did it all go off track with so much depth, so many pieces, so many different things that, when they had a smaller scouting department, it had so many guys that they were hitting on in these spots. In the 2015, this might be the hottest take in the take that people kill me for. I never thought that was a horrible thing at the time. In hindsight, yes, it was a horrible decision. Just like I'm the John Ross guy too. Some people never let me forget about that, which I think is cool. But I was thirsty for speed, bro. I needed speed. But the thing is, had they developed those guys correctly, I really like Jake Fisher. Just like right after that, I like Westerman. I liked a lot of these guys, and I just feel like they never developed anybody. And there's guys in this upcoming draft. There's a kid, Guyton, that was at the Senior Bowl that everybody likes. He reminds me a lot of Cedric Ogbuehi with that like that slimmer frame and all these different things. And I just was thinking to myself, like, there's some short things and some things, and there's some guys that you gotta, work with. Jake Fisher in that same draft that we're talking about, I really liked a lot of his speed because he was converted over. So he had the athleticism that a lot of people were looking for, but they never developed him correctly. And then so now in hindsight, we're like, man, that was a horrible draft. And I feel you, but I think that some teams might have got their hands on some of those same players and been like, man, I know what to do with it. But, I think it just sucks.
And let me say this real quick because Maan is firing now. He is on the chat firing. Maan says 3 potential Hall of Famers on 2015. Maan, what about 05?
Who's Chad Johnson, and Willie? Chad and Willie?
Willie. And honestly, guys, I honestly think at one point in his career, you could talk about Justin Smith being up there in the conversation. I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer.
He's in the conversation.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But if you're going to throw out that there's 3 potential Hall of Famers on the 2005 team.
Yeah,
just as well. And I mean, I don't know how you could not leave those guys off. But I'm gonna do this really quick. I'm gonna go through because I gotta give Maan his opportunity here. Here is the 2015 Bengals roster. Obviously, there's no rookies on here that we're going to even discuss. Andy Dalton, again, big year from him, 32, 50, 25, 7. Jeremy Hill only had 790 yards rushing. He did have 11 touchdowns. Remember, he had all the touchdowns that year.
You got to tell the rest of the story, though. You got to tell the rest.
So that's like half of Rudy's total.
Yeah, but you got to tell. But y'all not telling the full story. Why am I now taking up for 2015?
Listen,
you're not telling.
Chris Perry.
Listen, I'm gonna talk about
Chris Perry.
Don't forget Giovanni Bernard. Had 730 yards rushing.
So Rudy had their totals combined.
So it was combined. But does that speak more?
Hold on, Jake. Are we really gonna forget? Are we really forgetting how, like, I know Chris Perry ended up being a bust, but are we really forgetting that Chris Perry was like a good receiving running back? Are we forgetting that he had like 400 receiving yards in 2005 out the backfield?
Yeah, I didn't leave that out on purpose. I'll tell you, when we drafted Chris Perry, I was so pissed off
because we all wanted Steven Jackson. We all
wanted Steven Jackson. Every single listen. I was in Orlando I can't remember where it was for a draft party, and every Bengal fan there wanted Steven Jackson. It was absolutely. But
I also remember exactly where I was when we drafted Steven Jackson. I was in Cincinnati, and I was at a Lazarus, sitting in the furniture section watching the draft. And I was sitting there. I'll tell this real quick. I was sitting there and I'm like, oh, we're about to get Steven Jackson. And then I see the logo go from the Bengals to the Rams. And I'm like, Rams aren't going to get him. They got Marshall Faulk. Nah, they're not. Steven Jackson. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, God. All right. Thanks for bringing that up. I did not want to.
Can I say the one thing that you're leaving out in the rushing part is the whole Gio Bernard part. And as a pass protector, he's one of the best pass protecting running backs of all time. And then also you're not active. You need to factor in his season. In his season, he had 49 receptions for 500 yards himself as well too. So he's a multi-purpose back. And as a cumulative, the 2005 had 1,900 rushing yards. 2015 had 1,805. So it's not that big of a difference, other than the fact that you're looking at the player itself, of course.
That's what I'm doing.
Don't sleep on Kenny Watson now. Right. Don't sleep on Kenny Watson as the third running back.
Kenny Watson. I love Kenny Watson.
Don't sleep on Rex Burkhead.
That is true.
Hold on,
just true. Burkhead was nice. I ain't gonna lie.
So
Burkhead was nice.
I think we've got two different arguments. One is which one's the better team, and I think Maan's point, and I'll try and argue Maan for you. I think Maan's point is the 2015 had a better road to the Super Bowl and a better chance to win the Super Bowl. 2005, his points in his comment was our defense was our issue. Our defense wasn't as good as 2015, and the road in 2005, the very next week, you have to go through a Peyton Manning in his prime with a suspect defense. Yes, we're getting turnovers, but you didn't get turnovers against Peyton Manning back then. You just didn't. And then if we got
we're going to shoot it out.
Then we would.
Patriots did. The Patriots did.
We're going to shoot it out.
You would have had to have seen the real GOAT, Tom Brady, in 2015. Which one is
Don't
easier?
Forget, we played that Indianapolis.
Well, but Tom Brady with a better defense.
You need Maan here.
Listen, we played that Indianapolis Colts team earlier in the year, and we were. I think we scored 37 on them.
It was a shootout.
Yeah, we could have beat them. It was like 44-37. We could have beat. And listen, if the Steelers beat them, we could have beat them. Exactly. I'm telling you right now, if the Steelers beat them, we could have beat them. That Bengals offense was unmatched. It was better than that Colts offense. I will argue that point if Mom wants to argue.
And in 2005, we lost to the team that won the Super Bowl. 2015 did not lose to the team that won the Super Bowl that year.
Yes, I like it. That's a good point.
Maan in the comments said we gave up 45 points. He said Manning and the Colts beat the Bengals earlier that year in Cincinnati.
It was 45-37.
Peyton Manning in the regular season and Peyton Manning in the postseason is two different Peytons.
That's true. Let me ask you this though. The hypothetical one I was telling you, Eric, like it's hard to sell me on like who's better in like a hypothetical. But what about position battles? Because when Jake was going through different position battles and then he brought up Reggie Kelly, he kind of glossed past that. And I know why, because Tyler Eifert.
Don't knock Reggie.
Nah, dog. Matt Schobel. What are you talking about, dog?
I'm not knocking Reggie Kelly. I'm not right, but I'm not. I think he's better than Sample, but that'd be like a sampler telling you right now in 2024, bro, we're straight at tight end. Like, nah, Tyler Eifert is a real deal.
Listen, let me throw out this roster real quick. Let me throw out this roster, and then I want you guys to talk about the comparison. So I did 2005. Here's 2015. Andy Dalton at quarterback. We talked about his stats. Jeremy Hill, AJ Green, a Pro Bowler that year, 86 receptions, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. Marvin Jones, 800 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns. Mohamed Sanu, only 400 yards receiving, no touchdowns. Tyler Eifert, 615 and 13 touchdowns for Tyler Eifert. He was a Pro Bowler that year. Andrew Whitworth,
nightmare.
He was a night. Can you imagine if he stayed healthy, guys? Andrew Whitworth, Pro Bowler, and probably going to be a potential Hall of Famer. Then you have Andre. This is where it starts to decline. We have Andre Smith, the other tackle, Clint Bowling at guard, Kevin Zeitler. Listen, Kevin Zeitler, we can talk. I mean, he's solid. He's solid player.
Hold on. Andre Smith wasn't what we perceive Andre Smith until later on. In that season, he was still good. Andre Smith
was bad. I didn't say he was bad.
You said when Clint Bowling retired a year or two after, I was hurt. He was good. Zeitler, yes, that was early Zeitler, but these are not bums.
Listen, are you telling me Clint Bowling is on the same level as Eric Steinbach?
No. Hell no. No, but you're showing me offensive linemen that you're trying to perceive as like a weakness or whatever. That's not the weakness. The only weak link
compared to 2005.
The only weak link on the offensive line was Bodine, bro. The only weak link. Everybody else on that offensive line was solid. If you gave Joe Burrow that same offensive line right now, we would lose 2 games and go to the bowl every.
If you let me tell you about how bad Bodine was. If you told me I could choose between Maan and Bodine at center, I would think about it. Like Maan in his prime. Listen, Maan in his prime over Bodine. I think I might take Maan in his prime.
That is nasty. But hold on. This is what I'm saying, Jake. Instead of going through like the whole thing. All right, quarterbacks. 2005. Who you taking versus 2015? You taking 2005, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, sure. All right, running backs. Who you taking 2005 because of Rudy, right?
I'm taking 2005 because legitimately out of 22 starters, 20 of them are better. That's why I'm taking 2005. Maybe not 20. I'll go 18. I'll go 18. Listen. Mike Nugent, the Bengal kicker.
Mike Nugent is horrible.
In 2015, 82% field goal kicker. Okay. Yeah. Remember, Shane Graham was 90. Again, another Pro Bowler, Cedric Pierman. Remember Cedric Pierman? Solid special teamer. He made the Pro Bowl for that. Now this is where 2015 has got us on a couple positions. Geno Atkins.
Oh, for sure.
I mean,
that's what I was getting to.
He's one of the best. He's one of the best 3 techs to ever play the game, right? I mean, I think we could all argue that. Carlos Dunlap in his prime, 13 and a half sacks. Michael Johnson, one of the most solid Bengals, I think, career-wise. He had 5 sacks that year. One of my favorite Bengals still to this day is Vontaze Burfict. I mean, Maan and I drove up for that 15 playoff game and watched Vontaze Burfict single-handedly take over that Steeler game. Let me tell you, the only reason we were in that game is because of one person, Vontaze Burfict. He's the only reason we were in that game. Remember, we were getting shut out at halftime, and I swear to you guys, watching it live, it was like Vontaze Burfict came out of that locker room and said, we are not losing this football game. And I hate the way the game ended, because if Jeremy Hill doesn't fumble the ball, let me tell you
we can have a whole argument off of this, because there will be somebody after this show right now. There'll be somebody online right now that will say, if Burfict or Pac-Man don't, and I'll be like, stop right there. If Pac-Man and Burfict don't play in that game, you get blown. You're not even in the game to even tell me about anything later on. If their Jeremy Hill fumble does not happen, you win the game, and that's it. And then the person, and I run into this argument like once every couple months or something. They be like, well, you got to be more disciplined. I'd be like, yeah, you got to have the same accountability for Jeremy Hill in that instance to say, get down. Like, you know, like we just watched Zay Flowers literally do something very similar. Like in that moment, you can't reach the ball out at that spot, or in the moment that Jeremy Hill was in, you got to get down, and that's it. And the game is over.
Let me tell you guys, it was rainy. It was nasty. The whole game. The whole game, it was rainy and nasty. And Maan commented on here, and Maan is 100% right, guys. Being there live, when Vontaze Burfict intercepted that ball, every Steeler fan in the stadium left, guys, in droves. In droves. They were all gone when it all happened. When it all turned around, there was no Steeler fans in the stadium, guys. I'm telling you. It went from Bengal fans 110 miles an hour. When Jeremy Hill fumbled, it was like you could hear a pin drop. It was the most insane, emotional thing you've ever seen. And just think about it. He picks up 7 yards on that first down carry, 3 yards, and the game is over. The game is over. The next carry, 3 yards, the game is over. The clock runs out. It was absolutely the worst thing you've ever seen in your life. And I hate the fact that Vontaze Burfict he has become like the enemy of that game. And he wasn't.
I hate that. I hate it.
Listen,
I hate it,
he
bro.
was the best player on the field.
He
was better than anyone.
Thank God for Joe Burrow.
You
guys just made me relive
Antonio
that.
Brown. Oh my God, he was the best player on the field.
Jake, you have to see me. Sometimes I'll have this dialogue with someone on the timeline and there'll be somebody I haven't seen in the comments yet, but there'll be somebody that I don't know how they're thinking or what game that they saw. But they'll be like, man, if y'all didn't do all of this stuff and if Burfict didn't give Antonio Brown, like I think that's like the millennial conversation, like the new wave conversation. If he doesn't do CTE and all, I'll be like, listen. At that moment, I'm gonna tell you this: when Hill fumbled the ball, I remember I was watching. My wife hates football; she doesn't watch football like I do, but she understands my passion for it. When that happened, and then Ben came out, I said it's over. It was over right then. When he came out of there, out of nowhere, when he came out the tunnel, it was over right then. Like when Hill fumbled, and then simultaneously the camera, you couldn't see this because you're at the game. The camera then went to like him right after that, and he started like jogging out there. I said, "Oh, it's over." And she was like, "Oh no, it's not. I mean, it's still." I'm like, it's over. And this is pre-Burrow, so you know, in the Burrow, you know what I mean. Like up to a young Bengal fan, they're like, yes, I believe I'm gonna win every game now, but before. You weren't winning any of those games. So when you saw something like that happen, and it's so unfortunate, we didn't even get into like the end of 2005, but it's so unfortunate. I saw somebody write this comment that these two teams that we're talking about are both ended by Steelers, right? Yes. And there's so much tragedy like attached to the end of it. And the Steelers forever, like, you know, like they took this Super Bowl from us. Like that Super Bowl. Agree. Like they just straight up just took it straight from us. Like,
and you know, this is the thing, guys. This is the thing. Being there and watching this. Remember, they created 3 penalties from that game, all because of Steelers plays. The first one, remember the unsportsmanlike against Giovanni Bernard? It was never called.
Leading the helmet.
Leading with the helmet to Gio, it knocked him out. He fumbled the ball. We were inside the 15-yard line, about to score before halftime when that happened. No flag, blatant helmet to helmet. Number 2, Joey Porter runs onto the field, the coach of the Steelers, right? Grabs Reggie Nelson's from the back grabs the back of his
thread. Jerry Porter goes onto the field to argue a call and like just get in and mess with people in the face. You're talking about Munchak on the sideline, grabbing Reggie Nelson on the sideline.
Yeah, so you had
Jerry Porter
running on.
I say
field.
Jerry Porter because Pac-Man. I always say
Jerry
Jerry Porter because Pac-Man goes crazy after the game. He's like, Jerry Porter still on the field. So to this day, I still call him Jerry Porter.
No flag, right? No flag for Joey Porter on the field. No flag for Munchak putting his hands on a Bengals player. It was just the craziest 2 minutes that you've ever seen in a football game.
You ever talk to a Steelers fan about it? They don't think nothing of it. It's the memories that Bengals fans have of this game are totally different. Like, they're just like, oh, okay, yeah, that was unfortunate. You guys melted down. Like, for Bengals fans, that is a big deal, bro.
Let me ask you guys this, all three of you. I want to see who gets this right. Who is the leading tackler on the 2015 Bengals team?
Vinny Ray.
Vinny Ray. It was Vinny Ray. Vinny Ray with 98 total tackles. Vinny Ray was him. I'm telling you, he again, you talk about one of the most underrated Bengal players. Vinny Ray was just that good. And we can't forget about Reggie Nelson.
I'm going to ask you this. How many interceptions did Reggie Nelson have in that 2015 season?
It was 8 or 9.
Anybody else got a guess?
I'm going to say 8. It was 8 or 9.
Before it was Jesse Bates, it was Reggie
8.
Nelson. Before
it was 8.
Jesse Bates, it was Reggie.
And remember too, Reggie Nelson, he was like Ben Roethlisberger.
He always picked off Big Ben. He always picked
off Big Ben. That was, guys, think about that Bengals decision. Signing George Iloka and letting Reggie Nelson walk. What in the hell? Whose idea was that?
But I'm gonna tell you another one though. You know, when they let Iloka go, remember at the time Mike Brown didn't give up a lot of like dead money, and Jesse Bates was balling out so crazy that they just let Iloka go. And I forgot what his the dead money was on his contract, but that was kind of unheard of when he got cut in favor of Jesse Bates too.
Yeah, I mean that's again very parallel, right, from that same type of situation. But again, my point is this 2015 team, it was an incredible team. But again, I think when it comes down to it, guys, if you're telling me that pound for pound the 2015 roster team season is better than 2005, I just don't see it. I don't see where you could possibly say that. Again, the defense, yes, the defense was great from 2015. I talked about it earlier. Almost every game you watched that year, Vontaze Burfict was the best player on the field. I mean, he was – and again, I don't want to get on a Vontaze Burfict rant because I'm so pissed on how his legacy ended. But Vontaze Burfict was one of the most dynamic linebackers in that era. And if he played for the Steelers or the Ravens, he would be worshipped by the NFL. He would be worshipped. I mean, agreed?
1,000%.
Sure. But
you know what I mean?
Don't let me get started about this guy. If this guy wouldn't have had his off the field issues, he's probably in my opinion, one of the best Bengals linebackers of all time.
I agree. I agree. Odell Thurman, you talk about, I mean, think about that, guys. Two of the best Bengal linebackers of all time. If you just take away the off the field stuff. Yeah. And again, Vontaze didn't really have all that. It was more on the field for Vontaze.
Yeah.
Odell's was off the field.
You gotta be a wild boy. There's two positions in the NFL that I just feel like they're just built different mentally, and that's running back and linebacker. I just feel like the running back position has changed a lot, but you can't. It's not Pop Warner. This, not even high school. It starts to get really violent. And you're getting hit every single play, and linebackers are just wired up really crazy. Can I just say one thing about this? Because I'm a 2005 guy, and I think we would have won a bowl. But the argument in its totality to me isn't about a hypothetical who they would play. It isn't about what I think something would have happened in this thing. It boils down to this. I look when I tear down a lot of different teams that people do not like me online, I'm very good at pointing out the weaknesses. 2015, Andy Dalton wasn't a weakness for that particular season, right? I still move in favor of Carson Palmer, and I still think ultimately Carson Palmer is a better quarterback, and he was a better quarterback, whether it was with the Cardinals or whatever. That's not really the conversation to me as a whole, but ultimately that's why I'm picking that team. It's because the quarterback at the helm, and that's just how I fundamentally move through football. But the one thing that I think that is flawed in your 2005 argument to me is this. Whenever you're trying to point out a weakness in 2015, it's not weak enough. So you know what I'm saying? Like I could go in 2023, I could say the Browns are a really good team, but I'm gonna go straight to the quarterback. I'm gonna go to the drop off in the offensive line play this season that just happened. I'm gonna go to their lack of weapons. 2015, I got AJ Green, Marvin Jones, and Sanu. So I'm not weak at the wide receivers. I got one of the best tight ends in football. I got a top 5 offensive lineman. I got a top 3 defense. My defense is killer. You know what I'm saying? That's the dilemma when you try to knock down the 2015 team, that you just come back and say, yeah, I didn't like Russell Bowdoin, and I think Drake Kirkpatrick gave up too many big plays. You see what I'm saying? Like it's not enough. It's not enough to make me be like, because then I'm gonna just come back and just say, well, I had Geno Atkins, I had Dunlap, and you didn't have none of that. And then I'm gonna go to the linebackers, and then it's a preference thing. Ace prefers Odell or whatever, right? I thought that Vontaze, like, you know what I mean, and like Malaluga and AJ Hawk, I thought that trio was nasty. I thought the safety combination was super nasty. I thought the depth, you got Madu Williams and people like that. Oh, that was early. I'm sorry. But you the depth of like Leon Hall and all these guys like that, you got so much depth in the defense is even if you're not going to say it's way better, it's better. And then when you try to compare and say, well, 2005 offense was better, it's not that much better to me, in my opinion. And that's the reason why the conversation keeps on going like that, because the one thing that you're going to come back to is the quarterback. But the quarterback for this one unique exercise in 2015 wasn't ass. He actually was good in this 1 year. And that's what I think that the 2015 people. I'm gonna tell you, my favorite Dalton year, my favorite one is the one where they had Laser, and all he had was like an agent AJ Green, and he was dominant in the red zone. I thought that was my bet. I think that's 2016 I'm sorry, 2018. And I remember like it was a mid team. It was like they won like 7-9 or something like that. But in my opinion, I thought that was one of, because Dalton had way less and he was like pretty efficient. Yeah. But that's a whole nother story.
I must say I agree with mostly what Zim said, except for using AJ Hawk, because AJ Hawk was trash.
All right. Well, forget AJ Hawk. Give me what you call it, Vinny
for sure.
I mean, he was. I think a lot of his tackles were. A lot of people were throwing at him. Remember when we got what's the dude Brown from the Bills? Remember
Preston Brown.
Preston Brown. Yeah, remember everybody just would attack him because he was so slow. A lot of that was what they would do to Vinny, but Vinny was super solid and he was so smart and so intelligent. And he always had guys in the right spot.
And again, you know, I think too, and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. For me, I'm just looking at pound for pound on the roster. I agree with you. I don't think we can look at hypotheticals, because honestly, I think both of these teams, if you take the injuries out of it, both of these teams win playoff games and compete for a Super Bowl. I just think I look at pound for pound. Let me say this real quick, and I think this is something very interesting. That Bengals 2005 team played in a tough. Then the division was tough. They went 11-5. They went 5-1 in the division. The 2015 AFC North was trash. It was terrible. Listen, the Browns won 2 games, I think. The Ravens won maybe 4 or 5 games. The Steelers squeaked into the playoffs. Remember in 2005, the Bengals and the Steelers were both 11-5. They were both two of the top teams in the AFC. And I think the other two teams maybe won 6 or 7 games. The AFC North in 2015 was trash. And again, I'm just throwing that out there.
The only thing was the Ravens had Kyle Bowler at quarterback, though. Kyle, I should have been a bowler.
Kyle Bowler.
But that defense, that Ravens defense back then was crazy. Bart Scott, Terrell Suggs, McAllister, Ray Lewis, Amari Rowe, Ed Reed, Deion Sanders at 37 still was running a 4-4. Like,
that's crazy.
It was kind of nasty, bro.
And
I'm not gonna lie.
And let me tell you this, that that Bengals 2005 team, just so we throw it out here, 421 total yards that's crazy. Scoring over 400, it's not yards, points. 421 total points. Again, I think you could argue, Zim, that the 2005 Bengal offense is one of the greatest Bengal offenses of all time. Again, just throwing that out there.
Yes.
It was incredible.
And I'm with you. I agree. I lean 2005, man. I just think, I said the 2015, there's not many weaknesses. That's the issue with trying to like slight 2015 to me. Is like there's not that many weaknesses. Bodine, Dre Kirkpatrick could be looked at as a weakness.
Yeah.
What else?
And let me. Well, yeah. I mean, again, D'Amato Petco. I'm not sure where you would put him at. I don't say he's a weakness, but you know,
it was just a run stuffing son of a gun. I mean, he was just stuffing the run. That was it. Bro, think about it. We had Wallace Gilberry currently right now going into the 2023 season right now, like as a rotational piece, helping out like BJ Hill with no interior pressure. Like that was just a rotational guy. Michael Johnson as like instead of Joseph Osai.
What about Jonathan Fanene, though? I mean, that's a rotational guy. That was a rotational guy.
Yeah.
Landon Johnson did not start on that Bengals 2005 team. I mean, that's crazy to think. Those are some really good role-playing Bengals. And I want to say this too. The Bengals gave up a lot of points in 2005, but the scores of their games, there was 1, 2, 3, 4. There were 4 games where they gave up 10 points or less. Okay. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, 7 games where they gave up 17 points or less. Not bad. Not bad. Remember, they had some high scoring games. They gave up 45 to the Colts, but they scored 37. They gave up 29 to the Ravens, but scored 42. They gave up 31 to the Steelers, but scored 38. I mean, and remember, too, the last game of that season was against the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know if you guys remember this. The Bengals already were set. They were set on where they were in the seedings. They benched everybody, and the Chiefs beat us 37-3. That skewed the points for and points against too. I mean, again, I think those are things you have to look at when throwing all that stuff out there.
Yeah. We need to do a part 2 with Maan at a later date, guys.
Hold on.
I do have to go though.
We had Sean Smith on 2005. Sean Smith wasn't bad now.
No, he wasn't bad. Sean Smith wasn't bad. Zim, appreciate you. Appreciate you stopping in. Ace, appreciate you stopping in. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We will, guys, again, I don't even need to tell you. You know where to find them. Check them out. They are some of the best in the business. We love you guys. Thank you so much for everything you guys have done for us and what you do for the Wincinnati Pod. Appreciate you guys.
And thank you what you did for 2005, Jake. Let's get it.
Thank you.
Let's get it. We won. I mean, 2005 won. I mean,
hey, my final thought on the greatest offense of all time, 2000, like you just said, 2005 was 26.3 points a game. 2015, 26.2.
Oh God. Oh, see, I told you he was gonna jump ship. Look at he leaves. What is that? Ace, he leaves on that note.
He was originally 2015, and then he thought that they were gonna get cooked, jumped over, then he went back to 2015.
You know what's funny, Ace? You know what's funny is ever since the Ravens lost, all of our listeners, I don't know if you guys are the same, they're all looking for Aaron Butler. People are worried about Aaron Butler. Have you heard from him? I haven't heard from him. He usually trolls us.
Haven't seen him. Aaron, where you at, my boy? Where you at?
Guys, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. All of you guys, we love you. Thank you for jumping on here. Thank you for all the great comments. As always, for not only the Wincinnati Pod, but the Bengals Pulse as well. So thank you guys, our listeners. We love you guys. Thank you for jumping in. Ace, appreciate it, man. Really do appreciate you stopping by, you and Zim. You know, you guys, again, you gave us this great opportunity. We love you guys for it. Thank you so much for everything you've done for Maan and I and continue to do. Much love, man. Eric, any final words, Eric, from you, bud?
I feel like we're all arguing about our favorite kids. We love them all. We love the 2015. We love the 2005. We love the 2022 Bengals. We'll love the 2024 Bengals. Yeah.
Hey, the next argument, Ace, is going to be was the 2022 Bengal roster the best roster in Bengal history? I think there's an argument there that says the 2022 Bengals could be the best in history. If you don't have those injuries on that offensive line, Ace, you talked about it.
That's true.
One of the best. All right, guys, if you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the awesome podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. As always, if you like this podcast, make sure you give us that 5-star review. We'd very much appreciate that. Check out Maan on Twitter at @TheFireMaan. Check out me on Twitter at Coach Jake Owens 9. Eric, check him out on Twitter at eFlash with 2 H's 88. Check out the Wincinnati Pod on Twitter at Wincinnati Pod, and the Bengals Pulse on Twitter at Bengals_Pulse9. Ace, real quick, tell everybody, although they know already, where they can find you, my man.
Yep, at New Stripe City on Twitter.
And Zim
at
is
Zim Hude.
At Zim Hude for Zim. Check those guys out. They are some of the best in the business. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight and tuning in. Obviously, Ace and I won this discussion. It's a no-brainer. 2005 better than 2015. He is Eric. He is Ace. I am Jake. Thanks, Zim, for stopping by. This is the Bengals Pulse. Hoo day, Bengal fans. We will see you next week.